went to the barber, I said, can you give me a short back and sides? And I won't be doing that again. The JBL 6, kind of taken the JBL world by storm. Yeah, it's not the greatest speaker in the world, but hey, it's not bad for JBL. It's not completely overpriced. It's actually quite reasonably priced for what we get. You may be wondering, ooh, I wonder if it can challenge the JBL Charge 5. On paper, that's a 40 watt speaker, that's a 30 watt speaker. You might think, well, that's only 25% better. But you can't go by specs just like that. We've got to take into account driver size. In terms of driver area, Flip 6, 3,000 millimeters squared. JBL Charge 5, 3,989. So we're talking 25% more surface area in terms of drivers on the JBL Charge 5. Just like this Flip 6, it does have a woofer and a tweeter, but obviously a bigger woofer and tweeter on the JBL Charge 5. 52 by 90 millimeters, the very, very vast racetrack driver compared to the 45 millimeters by 80 millimeters woofer on the Flip 6. And then we've got the 16 millimeter tweeter. We've got a 20 millimeter tweeter. So how much difference does that make? First thing I'm going to show you is how they compare in terms of sound signature. I'm going to show you the frequency response. Just remember, it's a small part of the overall picture of how a speaker sounds. Flip 6, Charge 5. What the JBL Flip 6 does have is a dollop of extra bass for low volume, which reduces rapidly as you go up the volume scale. And what that means is, particularly bass heavy and warm at low volumes, compared to the Charge 5, which is more upper bass heavy, it does have deep extension, but it's dominated more by the upper bass. The mids are a bit more balanced, and the mids and the highs are more balanced than on the Flip 6. And as you got the volume scale, the Charge 5 will become relatively more bass heavy because the bass is consistent up the volume scale compared to the Flip 6, which is very bass heavy at lower volumes and reduces rapidly as you go up the volume scale. It's also on the brighter side, the Flip 6, compared to the flatter JBL Charge 5. Till, of course, you hit 80% on both these speakers, you get a hard limit on the bass, but the Flip 6, considerably brighter, screechier, according to the frequency response, as you hit maximum volume. It's half the size. It's half the size dimensions, it's half the size in weight. It's 550 grams versus 980 grams. On paper, the frequency response looks a little bit more balanced for the JBL Charge 5, but what we do get with the JBL Flip 6 is a very warm sound at low volumes. There's a lot of bass adjustment going on the Flip 6. It's particularly warm. There's a lot of mid bass. So at low volumes, it does seem like it could take on these bigger speakers. Just remember, it's a small speaker. It sounds small. That's a bigger speaker. It sounds bigger. It's not just about sound signature and paper specs. At the end of the day, smaller, smaller, larger, larger. That's how they sound in the real world. I'm also using +1 bass in the EQ. That's the big thing about JBL. 40 years on, they've decided, what groundbreaking news. They've just heard you can have EQ in an app. They've given us EQ in the app. Yeah, it's a 3-band slider, but it is a real graphic equalizer. It's not doing any tricks. And there's only a little bit of headroom. They've probably purposely reduced the default tuning to give themselves a little bit of headroom. And the louder you go, the less headroom you've got. I'm going to use +1 on bass, default, mids and highs, because you get a handle on how it sounds in default anyway, but also a little bit of an edge in terms of bass. Just know that you can go +2 in the bass. In the real world, I would do +2 in the bass. I'll go -1 or even -2 in the highs to balance the sound out. But I'm not going to do that because you're going to come on the comments and say, well, that wasn't fair because there's no EQ in the app for JBL Charge 5 and we don't know now what default sounds like. Oh, you messed the whole thing up. 50% volume comparison.
You're dressed in black tonight, with a stick of dynamite in your bag of tricks. Alright, I'll be the match to help you light. I see the light inside you shining. It feels like we are almost flying. Wish we could be like this forever. Tell me you see it, don't fight the feeling.
Impressive what the Flip 6 does at lower volumes, where it's tuned to have a heavier bass, particularly in the mid bass, which is where its strength lies. The other flip side of that is there's a bit of a cutout in the mids, going to make it sound a bit recessed in the vocals. Because of it, vocals will not pop. It will sound okay, but in A/B comparisons against something more balanced, such as the Charge 5, you'll notice lack of pop in the vocals. And the Charge 5 does have way more bass extension. It has more deep bass, but different tuning means it can hold its own in terms of actual bass, has more upper bass, has more mid bass, and that means it has more overall bass. Is a bit of a shocker. Just remember, this is a small speaker and it does sound small. This is a larger speaker and it does sound larger. That may be a deal breaker in the real world for you. So Flip 6 does well at low volumes, but it still sounds like a smaller speaker. It does sound thinner than the Charge 5, and it does sound a bit recessed in the vocals compared to the Charge 5, but it's closer than I would have expected before I heard the Flip 6. So let's go up to real world volume. Well, Alan Ross real world volumes, around 75% volume.
You can call me baby, but only for tonight. I can rock your world, boy, I'll take you for a ride. You can call me baby, but only for tonight. I can rock your world, boy, I'll take you for a ride. Catch me on a plane on my way to Italy, Cartier and Tiffany's. Catch me on a plane on my way to Italy. Diamonds on the dash, I buy all my cars in cash. Diamonds on the dash, I buy all my cars in cash. I'm dripping in Cartier and Tiffany. You can call me baby, but only for tonight. I can rock your world, boy, I'll take you for a ride. You can call me baby, but only for tonight. I can rock your world, boy, I'll take you for a ride. You can call me baby, but only for tonight. I can rock your world, boy, I'll take you for a ride. You can call me baby, but only for tonight. I can rock your world, boy, I'll take you for a ride. Take you for a ride. Take you for a ride. I'm dripping in Cartier and Tiffany.
While it may be still a bit closer between the two than I expected, it's now a clear winner for me, the JBL Charge 5. It is my preferred listen, but of course you'd get the Flip 6 because it's a smaller speaker. But remember, if it's just about, whoa, look at what they've done in the bass on the Flip 6, can it challenge the Charge 5? Not really. As you got the volume scale, especially as you get to 75%, there's more bass overall now on the Charge 5. It's got more mid bass, it's got more deep bass, it's got more bass extension, sounding thinner, sounding more hard edged on the JBL Flip 6, but not sounding terrible, but starting to get a little bit harsh. What happens at maximum volume?
Open your mind. The world has been left broken. Open your mind. The world has been left broken.
Around you.
So the JBL Charge 5 is louder. It's louder by 1.5 decibels. Peaks is also about 1.5 decibels up on the Flip 6. It's got 3 decibels more upper bass, mid bass a bit closer, just up by 1 decibel. But by the time you hit deep bass, we're talking 13 decibels. At 60 hertz, it's 10 decibels up on the JBL Charge 5. And we get that dip in the mids on the Flip 6, whereas it's a bit more balanced on the Charge 5. The Flip 6 is not a great listen at maximum volume. That's clear. Well, we already knew, you would have known if you'd watched my past videos. This gets very, very harsh as you push the volumes at 100%. That's well harsh. In the real world, you're going to want to reduce the treble in the app to listen to that speaker if it's maximum volumes that you want. But is that why they've given us EQ? Just to mess about and say, well, you got a bit more volume if you want, but we know you're never going to listen to it like that. Default versus default, clearly. JBL Charge 5. It's got more bass, got more upper bass, more mid bass, and more deep bass now. It goes louder overall, and it doesn't sound as harsh as the JBL Flip 6. So, if you're humming and hawing about, should I get the Flip 6? It's almost got as much bass as the bigger speakers. We'll get the JBL Charge 5. It will sound bigger. It's a bigger speaker. It has got more bass. It's got a better balance overall. And that's not taking away anything from the Flip 6. It's a small speaker and it sounds small. But it sounds decent for a small speaker. It sounds decent against past JBL Flip speakers. But the problem with the speaker is it sounds different at every volume level. It's really tuned to be impressive at lower to moderate volumes where it's got lots of bass. That falls away as you go up the volume scale. Starts to get really harsh. Starts to get quite screechy. You're going to have to start messing with the app, the EQ in the app, to balance that out. So it's never going to be, oh, it's close. I wonder if I should get the smaller speaker. Get the smaller speaker if you want a smaller speaker. Get the JBL Charge 5 if you want a better sounding speaker. For me, this is a great listen at low volumes. Can do better for a louder listening, but it's not a bad speaker. At least now, some of the latest JBL speakers are not bad speakers. Isn't it ridiculous that we can say, oh wow, it's not a bad speaker, and we think that's brilliant for JBL. That tells us where we've been with JBL. And the value you can get if you shop around on the internet, on Amazon, on Alan Ross reviews, and see what he says is the pound for pound world champion, blah, blah, blah. But in this video, the conclusion is JBL Charge 5 is a better speaker all round, but the Flip 6 can surprise you at lower volumes. Hope you got something out of this video, and I hope you watch my next video.
I ain't about that life. I ain't about that life. Ain't no project wife, got my logic right, cause I'm not your type. I ain't about that life. I ain't about that life. Sorry, ma, I ain't get it right. I'ma just live my life. I ain't about that. I ain't about that life.